So again, I'm Fiona Hall, Campus Dean at Empire College of Law in Santa Rosa, California. And this is another installment of our Exploring Careers in the Law series. And our topic today is attorney jobs at the trial court. And when I was in law school, I have to admit, I was completely unaware of career opportunities at the courts for attorneys. I mean, beyond being a judge. And it took a career day presentation at school to introduce me to the role of research attorneys at the courts. And that's what ended up being my dream job out of law school. So I thought this would be a great topic for tonight in case other people are unaware like I was. And on our panel, we are really lucky to have the Honorable Kenneth English, a Sonoma County Superior Court judge, and Ms. Carly Roden, who's the family law facilitator at the Sonoma Court. So let's start with you, Judge English. We'll put you on the hot seat first.
Right.
Could you please introduce yourself and give us more detail than I've given and share with us what your job entails now? And since you've worn a number of hats at the court, maybe you could also share what those jobs entailed.
Sure. I'll just give you sort of a thumbnail of my career progression, where I started, where I was, and where I am. So my name is Judge English. I was just seated on January 6th because I won an election last year for Superior Court Judge here in Sonoma County. I am sitting in Department 18, which is the unlimited civil department. Prior to that, I was a commissioner for 5 years, and I sat hearing misdemeanors, unlawful detainers, and civil harassment cases, and civil short cause. But before all of that, and before I even went to law school, I went to the California Culinary Academy in San Francisco. I graduated in 1995. I was a chef, and I worked all over the country doing that. I worked in dude ranches in Colorado. I worked on the seashore in New England, hotels, restaurants, you name it, I did it. But I did have an epiphany at one point that I wanted to get back into school. And so I got a bachelor's degree in history, and then I went to the George Washington Law School in District of Columbia, which I started in 2001, in August of 2001. So the world changed 1 month after I was in law school in DC. And that was an amazing event. It was tragic, but it really did focus myself in many ways on becoming more interested in working for the government after I graduated. After I graduated law school, I worked for a year with the federal courts in Wyoming as a law clerk to a federal district court judge, where we worked on a lot of important and interesting cases around Yellowstone and gray wolves and the interface between ranchers and the government and basically cattle leases. That was a lot of our cases, and criminal matters as well, federal criminal matters. From there, I went to private practice in Napa and Sonoma. I was primarily working in the wine industry. My background in the culinary arts and restaurants sort of facilitated that. And I was able to work and do a lot of work on grape growing contracts and winery regulation, a lot of different things. But I also did a little bit of criminal defense because I enjoyed it. And you'll know when you go out in the industry, when you have corporate clients and you're their attorney, they see you as your attorney for everything. They don't realize that you're not just a corporate attorney. So when their friends gets in trouble, they call you and they say, "Hey, Ken, can you go represent them in a DUI or what have you?" And so I always would say yes, and always had a very broad practice. But at some point, I knew I wanted to get back into government, and I had the opportunity to become the supervising research attorney in Sonoma County, where I supervised 6 to 8 attorneys at any one time who do the real boiler room work of the court. And what we do back in the sort of the recesses of the building is we read all of the documents, we read all of the briefs, and we prepare bench memorandum and tentative rulings and rulings after hearings. That's the bread and butter of a research attorney's work. And it's a really fascinating area because you're not an advocate. You work as a neutral for the court, trying to come to the right answer. And that fit my personality. And I know that it fits a lot of the people that came to work with me. at the Sonoma County Superior Court, that fits their personality. That's really what we were looking for when we were looking for people to be research attorneys. Are you able to take off the advocate's hat and have a deep sense of sort of curiosity about what's right? What does the law require us to do? Not what would I like it to do or who had the best argument. And so I really enjoyed that work. I also was able to get into a position where I was advising administration. And so I was getting into some more regulatory work with the court as opposed to just being a research attorney. And I really did enjoy that. And I have a good friend who actually works for the LA Superior Courts, and he does only that. He only works for the LA Superior Court in a capacity as their in-house attorney. And he has an entire department. And that's a really interesting sort of area of law as well. And a lot of people don't realize it's out there. After I worked with, as a managing attorney at the Superior Court, I was appointed as a commissioner. As many of you may or may not know, a commissioner is a subordinate judicial officer position. So I had limited constitutional authority, but the court, I was very lucky. The presiding judges in the court that I worked at really did give me interesting work to do. For instance, I sat in a misdemeanor calendar for 4 years. And I also helped develop a pretrial release program that was a bail alternative that was at the behest of a special working group that came out of the Supreme Court of California when they were looking at bail and bail inequity. So as a commissioner, I did a lot of very varied work. Again, unlawful detainer, misdemeanors, infractions. And then from there, I made the fateful decision to run for Superior Court judge. And so I can get into how you become a judge. There's really two tracks. There's the appointment track where you put your application in for the governor to appoint you, and you go through processes through the Judicial Nominations Evaluation Committee, known as JENI, and they call everybody you've ever known in your professional life and some people in your personal life, and they evaluate you for the governor. And then once that's done, the governor makes a decision to appoint you or not. For many applicants like myself, my application never went beyond the JENI committee. But I knew that I ultimately wanted to be a judge, so I took the other track, which is to run for an open seat. So a lot of people don't realize that when a judge retires during his or her office ending, we have 6-year offices. So if they retire in the same year that their office ends, their seat becomes open for election. And so you're not challenging a sitting judge, you're simply running for an open seat. And that's what I was able to do here in Sonoma. And thankfully, I got a lot of support from the local legal community and was able to secure a seat through election. Took a while I won March 5th. I think it was March 5th, 2024, and I was just sat January 6th. So I continued to be a commissioner until that point, and then I became a judge. My job as a judge is basically what you see is what you get. I sit in for trials, both jury and court trials. I write a lot. I do a lot of law in motion. So I have research attorneys working with me on my law in motion. They prepare my bench memorandum and my tentative rulings, and I review them, and we have some back and forth discussion. Typically, when I was a research attorney, we used to say that the judge will adopt our tentative 9 times out of 10, and once out of 10 times they're wrong. So I'm not in that. I like to have a good rapport with my research attorneys, and I think I do. And so that's the real big part of my job. And another part of my job that I see, which is important, is outreach. So when Dean Hall came to me and said, Judge English, will you come and be on a panel talking about careers with the court? Of course, I'm going to do this because I think it's important for us as practicing attorneys, as judicial officers, to really talk about our careers, because it's important for people who are going into the profession or investigating it to know everything that's out there. It's a very broad degree you would get from any law school, and it allows you to do so much. And I think a lot of people focus on what they see, what they think a lawyer does, or what they see on TV. And it's very, very different for a lot of us who go out into the profession. Well, that's really uh, my elevator speech. So, Dean Hall.
Thank you. A lot has happened for you over the years. It's impressive. And it's not actually that unusual for a research attorney to become a commissioner or become a judge. So that is, it's not one of the am I elected or am I appointed by the governor track, but it's how do I even get to that point where I could even be considered to be a judge. So it's a lot of people don't realize that. I think that there are opportunities to advance to that level from inside the court.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just at an event, and there was a judge from Napa, and she had gone through the exact same progression I had: uh, research attorney, commissioner, and then she became a judge. And so we had a lot in common. We talked about that, but all through the state, you see a lot of research attorneys make that jump because the judges are comfortable with them. They're comfortable with their sagacity, their ability to be ethical and honest, and so they become good commissioners. And then when you're a commissioner, you really do have, I'm not going to say an inside track to getting an appointment, but it doesn't hurt.
Right. So, Ms. Roden, I am really interested to hear we could just go and kind of do what Judge English just did and explain how you got into your position, but also what drew you to the law and kind of what your day in the life of a family law facilitator is like.
Yes. Okay. So starting with my current position, and then I'll rewind and explain how I got there. I work for the Sonoma County Superior Court as the managing attorney for self-help services and as the family law facilitator. Most of the time when you say family law facilitator, no one has any idea what that means. A family law facilitator there's one for each county, and we are self-help attorneys specifically for family law services. And even more specific than that, we specialize in government child support cases. So cases where a county's Department of Child Support Services has filed a court case against one parent or the other to establish child support. That's our federally funded area of expertise, but because the needs of the community and of self-represented litigants are much broader than that, family law facilitators also provide self-help services for all types of cases, usually divorce, legal separation, and nullity, as well as parentage actions, so custody cases between parents who are not and have never been married to one another, along with domestic violence restraining orders, grandparent visitation, step-parent adoption, guardianships, limited conservatorships. It varies from court to court what they assist with. The self-help component of the job means specifically that just like judges have to be neutral and impartial, all court staff do as well. So the service that we provide and that my staff and I provide to self-represented litigants is neutral legal information and procedural guidance to help them navigate the process. We have some pretty strict parameters on how we help, in that we cannot give anyone legal advice, legal opinion, or strategy. We don't represent anyone in court, and we're not responsible for the outcome of their case. But short of that, we do everything in our power to inform and educate litigants so that they can make the best decisions and the most informed decisions for themselves. And we also make referrals out to private attorneys and other legal service providers where it seems that a particular issue might be beyond the scope of what the litigant feels comfortable handling themselves or can handle themselves. I've been in my current role for about 5 years. I had the fabulous timing of starting this job right smack in the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So it's been an interesting journey coming on board when the physical facilities and services were impaired by those restrictions. And everybody in the state in self-help had to shift gears and try to figure out how to provide all of the same services that we were typically providing on a walk-in, first come, first serve basis, to doing it remotely through partitions with masks on and going on that adventure with the rest of the public. Now that things have settled, the job is much more stable and predictable, as much as any legal career can be. But that's sort of been my journey at the court. How I wound up here, if I'm rewinding all the way back, I initially was a reporter, a newspaper reporter. So in undergrad, I studied magazine journalism and Spanish, and I wanted to do that, either newspapers or print journalism. And I worked for a brief time as a newspaper reporter for the Paradise Post in Butte County. And in the course of my journalism education, we had to study mass media law and ethics. And my teacher, my professor for that course, taught it like a law school course and kind of prided herself on that. She had us brief cases, several cases per class session. She rigorously graded them and engaged in a Socratic seminar about the cases like you're all doing now or will be doing soon. And I loved that class so much that I thought, maybe I should go to law school. Nah, I'm going to be a reporter. And so I set off to work for the newspaper. And about a year into that, I thought, no, you know what? I think maybe there was something there. I think I do want to explore a career in the legal field. And so I left reporting to take a job as a legal assistant at that first law firm, did family law and personal injury, just to kind of get my feet wet, see what the legal profession was like, and see if I really did want to pursue it. And that had me hooked. So from there, I continued to work as a legal assistant in family law while I attended Santa Clara University in the South Bay. And I toyed with the idea all through law school of getting into immigration law because it was of real interest to me, both from an academic standpoint and from an interpersonal standpoint. The thing I found, though, although I took some electives, I did some clinical work in law school and immigration, is it is a difficult area of the law to find an entry-level job in. There's a huge need, but it's very complicated, and a lot of the jobs that you'll see in the area of immigration want substantial experience. Especially in the nonprofit sector, nonprofits that handle lots of different areas of the law they get grant funding for one immigration lawyer, so you'd better know what you're doing, and they kind of need you to be able to take it and run with it. So I ended up staying on the family track throughout law school, and when I graduated, I stayed in the South Bay practicing private practice family law. I worked for two different firms that were both handling high asset divorce type cases, one in San Jose and another in Menlo Park. And I got to a point where I felt like the area of law, the types of cases I was handling put me at a little bit of a distance from why I found law appealing and what I wanted to do with my legal education. So after several years of private practice, I decided to take a step back and take a sabbatical from practice to reevaluate whether I still wanted to be in the legal field, and if so, where in it did I want to be? And the best place I could think of to mull that over was in Peru, teaching English as a foreign language. So I did that for about a year, and I found the teaching experience really, really enriching. It kind of reconnected me to what I found appealing about the legal industry, which is really direct contact with people who need your help the most, and assisting those folks. So when I returned to the States, I thought, okay, I do want to re-enter the legal field, but I need to find my niche. And so glossing over a cross-country move that came in the middle, I found myself not back in Sonoma County. I'm from the South Bay, but I found myself back in California, living in Sonoma County, and I decided to re-enter the legal field in the nonprofit sector, working for Legal Aid of Sonoma County. And so I worked there assisting survivors of domestic violence with domestic violence restraining order applications. And I knew all the while that courts had this position called family law facilitator. I knew that it was self-help. I knew that it drew on a lot of my skills. And so I kind of thought, as I was working at Legal Aid, gosh, I would really love for one of those positions to open up. And lo and behold, about a year into working at Legal Aid, a position at this court did open up, and I applied and was able to secure the position. And it is honestly the best place I could have wound up in the legal field, I think, both for what I want to get out of it and what my skill set is, because it really marries all of my past experience together in one job, including the research and writing skills that you need and the people skills that you need to be a newspaper reporter. It draws on my experience teaching English, and trying to distill complicated concepts to people who have a variety of educational background levels and abilities to grasp the information. It also, I left out a huge chapter of my life that was also in the service industry, just like Judge English. So time spent hostessing, serving, bartending. Fundamentally, all of us who work at the court, these are customer service jobs in one fashion or another. And so this job that I have now, assisting self-represented litigants, really merges all of that. Service, customer service, teaching, writing, analysis. It's everything all rolled into one, and it's the best job I've ever had.
Well, that's also a fascinating trajectory that you took. And you touched on one thing as well about a job opened up for the family law facilitator position. And that is one thing, these jobs they're not a dime a dozen. They're not always there available. I mean, some of these jobs can be, you got to keep checking the court websites to see what's available, because there aren't that many per court usually. So they are kind of coveted for people who do, like we did, like Judge English and Ms. Roden and I did, for jobs. If you want them, it feels like there aren't enough of them available. So what aspect of your job do you like the most? And what aspect of the job do you like the least, Judge English?
Oh,
yeah, you're on again.
I'm on again. I always answer that question with the same thing. The best part of my job is that every day I encounter a new issue, something I probably have never had to research, I've never had to study, and I'm having to become an expert very quickly in pretty arcane areas of the law, because as a court attorney, as a research attorney, or as a judicial officer, you have to take what comes. You don't get to choose. You don't get to say, hey, I'm only going to do, corporate work, or I'm only going to do criminal work. You do everything. And that means that anything that comes through the door, you need to become competent at. That is the best part of my job, because I will never be bored doing the same thing over and over again. That being said, the worst part of my job is the fact that I never know what's going to come in the door. I never know, what to expect. I never know what I'm going to need to know before, it's hitting me, and I need to get up to speed very quickly. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of curiosity, and it's taxing. It really is. But again, it takes that kind of person has to have that curiosity. If you want to be a specialist, and a lot of professions are sort of going in that direction. Specialization is definitely something you're seeing even in the legal field, where lawyers are only doing one or two different types of things, and then passing off or referring their cases that don't touch on those specializations out to other people. We don't get that. We don't get that here. We have to be generalists in the court. So a research attorney, and judges or commissioners, they really do need to know a lot about a lot. And that was, I don't know if that's, punting your question a little bit, but it really is. That's how I feel about it. Is coming in every day, encountering something new, is both it's like one of my colleagues likes to say, we have an ex-parte calendar, which means that the lawyers are submitting things to us to decide in a very quick time frame. And she says it's like reversed Christmas. It's gifts she doesn't want to get, but she has to open them and decide what to do with them between 10:30 a.m. and 2 o'clock. And again, You never know what's going to be in those packages. And so you better be ready, willing, and able to dig in, become competent, and do your best. So that's my answer.
I don't think you dodged the question. I think it's just two sides of the same coin. So, and I can understand that feeling for sure. Wow. Ms. Roden, how about you? What's the thing you like the most and the thing you like the least?
I think mine is also two sides of the same coin. So the positive side that I love is when you see self-help work for someone, to whatever extent, when you get to empower someone with accurate information about the process, and sometimes that means dispelling inaccurate information that they read online or that the other party to their case told them in an effort to scare them. And when you can help a litigant and they can see that although it is complicated and it can be really intimidating, they can do it themselves. They can, especially in family law, when it's parents trying to advocate for what's best for their kids, seeing them uh, um, realize that I am in a good position, if not maybe the best position, to say what's best for my kids. And this is when and how I get to do it. And if they can follow the instructions and succeed and have their day in court and feel heard and feel like they were empowered and they understood what was relevant and they presented their case. And when they succeed, and we see folks who come in after a hearing and you can see it on their face that they really do feel empowered, and there's a sense of accomplishment in that scary thing that they thought they were going to have to hire a lawyer for, or were going to not succeed at or fail if they didn't have a professional do it for them, and yet they managed to do it on their own. That's fantastic. It's great. And that's what kind of gives us the energy to keep coming to work and do it every day. Because the flip side of that coin is it can be very disheartening when you do your best to try to assist someone, you provide the information, but for whatever reason, outside factors, the facts of their case, maybe what they're trying to tackle is beyond their capacity or what they're able to do, or maybe the information you're providing isn't resonating because they're viewing it from a particular emotional view or a personal view, and they're not able to, understandably, to separate themselves from the emotion of what they're experiencing and really process and understand what you're trying to explain to them, and sometimes to their detriment. That is hard. That's hard to see happen. And because the constraints on the job don't allow me to step in and tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do, or whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, or whether they should say that in their declaration or not, or whether they've said enough. Sometimes having your hands tied in that way can be really frustrating. And there's lots of times where I wish I could swoop in and fix something for someone or tell them what to do. And so having learned to bite my tongue and recognize when I can't do that and let the situation be, that's the hard part that I wish we didn't have to experience.
Yeah, that immensely rewarding part where you're really helping people and really help teaching them how the kind of it's like lawyers, we have a language that we speak and we keep it to ourselves and nobody else understands it. So if you're able to kind of share that language a little bit so that they can improve their situation, that would be really rewarding. But yeah, very hard to say no, I can't give you that answer. I can't tell you how you should state that in the declaration or whatever example one might give. Very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to you, Judge English. If you could go back in time to your law school self, what advice or words of encouragement would you give yourself?
Wow. I would say that it gets better. That this career that starts with a very steep learning curve. Law school, the first year, the second year is such a change in the way of looking at things, the way of thinking, the way of learning. I think Dean Hall said it right. It's learning a different language, but you're also rewiring your brain to look at things completely different. I would just tell myself, I say, look, you're going to get this. it takes some time. And I remember my first private practice job in Napa. I worked for one of the partners. Once came into my office and is just sort of mentoring me, and he said, "Look, Ken, I didn't feel like I was comfortable until I was 10 years in." And I don't know if that was supposed to help me or to, to scare me a little bit. But I can concur with a little bit of that sentiment now that it takes time. But at some point in your career, when you've been out in practice for a while, you're going to look back and you're going to feel comfortable. You're going to say, I kind of get this now. I understand what's going around or what's going on around me. Uh, and I was somewhat impatient as a law student, wanting to sort of be an expert almost immediately, wanting to grasp it and apply it and know everything going on. That's just not the case. It takes time. This is not a profession for people who are impatient. It is for somebody who wants to sort of marinate in the law. It takes time to get all of the nuance of what's going on. The other thing I would tell myself is that, uh, you know, that it is also knowable. I always felt like I was missing something in law school. Even in my first few years of practice, I always felt like I was, am I really seeing everything there is about a case or about a particular area of law? And now I've become very much more comfortable understanding that, you've got to be comfortable in gray. You have to be comfortable that, sometimes there's not really a good answer. In things you think they're, should be cut and dry, simply aren't and haven't been for 100 years. People have just been comfortable sort of sitting in this gray world. You've got to become comfortable in that. And that's what I would tell myself back in law school. I'd say, hey, look, it takes time. You'll get it eventually, but it takes time. And, you know, living in a gray area isn't so bad after all.
That is so true about the gray area. I think it's one of the hardest things for law students to get comfortable with, and then lawyers even sometimes. Ms. Roden, how about you?
Well, I got some advice or feedback that was similar to what Judge English heard. I think I was in my second year of practice, and I was venting to my supervising attorney that I just feel buried. I feel like I'm in this deep hole, and every time I think I'm getting a little bit, out of it, the hole gets deeper. And his words of comfort were, "Oh, don't worry. You're always going to feel that way. I still feel that way now, 12 years in. It's not because you're new." And I said, "You're not making me feel a lot better." But what I would tell myself, I think, is to remember that you're a human being first, and you're a law student or you're a lawyer second. I respect that, especially when you're in law school and when you have the bar exam. It to an extent has to be all consuming because you have to graduate, you have to pass those classes, and you do have to pass the bar. And that takes a lot of sustained concentration, a lot of work, and a lot of time. But all of that being said, if you let that habit carry into your practice and into your career, it will consume you. So you always have to try to keep some balance in your life. Don't forget that you have hobbies. Don't forget that you have friends and family who care about you and want to see you come up for air. And the more balanced of a person and a human being that you can be and take care of yourself, the more you'll enjoy your profession and the work that you do, and the better you'll be at it. Because when you get absolutely mired in eating, sleeping, and breathing the law, that can start to warp your perspective. It can make you miss things. It can make you burn out. So I would tell myself then, and I try to tell myself now, to not forget that the law is a piece of your identity. It is not the entirety of who you are. And I think that was especially important when I was trying to assess whether to leave private practice or not. I got a lot of feedback from colleagues and senior attorneys who told me that's career suicide. You might as well flush your resume down the toilet if you want to take a sabbatical this, at this point in your career. You may not be able to get back into the legal field. And I'm glad I didn't listen to that advice, because I wouldn't have wound up where I am now, and I wouldn't be in the job I have, where I am certainly happier than I would have been if I had stayed in private practice. I think I found my niche, and I think that required some exploration. And depending on the type of law you want to practice or where you see yourself, that advice might hold more water with you, or might be more true to the path you want to take. But for me, it wasn't true. And so I'm glad that I didn't cave to the pressure that you just have to go, 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 climb, 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 to get where you want to be, because I didn't do that, and I am now where I want to be.
It was a courageous decision, though.
Or very stupid. It could have been either one, depending on the outcome. I get to say now that it was good.
What do you think about the work-life balance that the court offers compared to working in a firm? Either one of you.
I think there's no comparison. I unfortunately, I never worked at a firm that was able to deliver work-life balance, no matter how much they wanted to encourage it. At the end of the day, private practice and the needs of your clients and fulfilling your ethical responsibilities to the people that you represent sometimes mean that you can't have work-life balance. And working for the court, on the other hand, it is a lot more manageable. As a court manager and someone who's on salary, certainly I'm expected to work until I get the job done, but I never get the message that I should be striving for more, or strive for excellence, of course, but burn yourself out, absolutely not. And the court wants to see you leave at 5 o'clock if you can. They want to see you have a full and robust life, and a life outside of the job. And so they're able to walk the walk more than other employers, I think. Judge English?
I echo what Ms. Roden is saying. If we have time, I'll give a little bit of an anecdote. Dean Hall's probably heard my anecdote. But I remember when I was interviewing for a very large international law firm in San Francisco, we had decided to live up in the North Bay, here in Sonoma. And I was, interviewing for a job at San Francisco at a very large firm, which I won't name. And I was at the last, it was like three interviews, and it was the last partner I was going to talk to, and I was going to I would have been working for him. And he said, I see that you're planning on living up in Petaluma. What is your plan for commuting back and forth? And I said, it's really great. I'm planning to take the ferry in from Larkspur every day, and come back and forth on the ferry. It seems so so easy. There's a lot of parking. And he looked at me and he said, that sounds so nice. But the last ferry from the ferry building leaves at 7 for Larkspur. And he didn't have to tell me what that meant. I think it meant that there would be a lot of nights past 7. And with someone who was raising 2 kids at the time, that didn't appeal to me, to have to work for long hours and on the weekend. I was very lucky in my private practice when I finally did land a job that I enjoyed with a firm in Napa. I did have a good work-life balance, but it did entail probably a weekend a month or so of going back into the office. Private practice, you always feel like you're always on the clock. Your head sort of changes a little bit with having to keep your time records, having to sort of interface with clients. It starts to take a lot of time that, frankly, is time that I would have rather spent with my family and with my, raising my kids. So for me, going back into government was also a great, opportunity to sort of refine that work-life balance, where weekends, you were never expected to work weekends. And if you did work a weekend, it would have been once a year, maybe. I can't remember many. And I don't recall many research attorney hours after 5. Occasionally you would have them. But, it's even become more flexible now since, because now we're allowing, at Sonoma, I believe we're allowing, I don't know how much remote work, but they're allowing research attorneys to do remote work. And so that is also sort of bolstering the work-life balance with government work. I was also, drawn to government work because it's stable. There's a lot of stability in government work that you might not be able to find in private practice.
Thank you both. That's great. Maybe we should open it up for questions.
Yeah, so at this point, if you have questions for our panelists or even Dean Hall, since she experienced life as a research attorney, that you are welcome to raise your hand, wait till we call your name and for you to unmute your mic and ask your question, or you can raise your virtual hand and we will call you. Not all at once. Just calm down.
Hi, I have a few questions for both of them. Sorry, I'm not on camera. I'm actually at the airport right now.
That's okay. Thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to ask first, Judge English, you had mentioned the process of becoming a judge, and one of the tracks was like the appointment track. Is that like an application or you get like nominated, or is it like a job announcement and then, those thorough interviews happen and then it gets, sent over to the governor to appoint you?
That's a great question, and thank you for allowing me to clarify. So the judicial application is online. You could look it up now, just put in California judge application, and you'll see that it's an application that is exhaustive. It took me several, I would say 2 months really of work to get my application together. And that goes through, you're going to list all of your job, your education, your personal, connections, your professional connections. You're going to answer several very open-ended questions about, well, why do you want to be a judge, and where do you see yourself, in the judiciary, those sort of questions. And they're very introspective, and they're very. I found the application to be very difficult to do. But once you finish your application, you basically send it off to the governor's office. He has what they call an appointment secretary, and the appointment secretary will then vet those applications and determine whether or not they're going to go through the next process. If that application is selected, it goes through what I was talking about, the Judicial Nomination Evaluation Committee, which is a branch of the Bar Association, the California Bar Association. And they're the ones that are going to interview you and going to give you a qualification. From there, it then goes back to the appointment secretary into what I imagine is a gigantic pile of applications for them to then decide who they're going to fill the positions that open up in California. Each county has a legislatively determined number of judicial positions. And so as those open up, the appointment secretary will appoint people with the governor's approval to fill those seats. So it's kind of, so you never want to, you want to make sure your application is going in when there are seats that are going to become open, if they're going to become open. But there are some counties, there's always open seats. A colleague of mine was telling me that down in one of the Southern California counties, much larger than us, I think there's 40 judicial vacancies. And so there are vacancies out there, but typically you're going to be applying where you live, where you have practiced. But there are some people who don't get appointed in the same place that they live. That's not unusual that the appointment secretary might say, hey, we're going to appoint you, but we're not going to appoint you for the county you put on the application. We're going to appoint you for another county. But that's the appointments process, and it's you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Thank you for that. Thank you for letting me know the process of becoming a judge in that manner. And then the second and last question for you that I want to ask was, since you worked in private practice, I know a lot of the cons, the negatives, right, compared to maybe working for government and maybe having that work-life balance. Do you have any pros about having the private practice? Anything maybe that like you miss that, you know, from your days from having done that?
Uh, you know, there is a certain, I don't know, a camaraderie that you get with the attorneys at your firm, because you are really in the trenches. I hate to use a war metaphor, but it feels like it. You're going through very difficult things together, and you build very close bonds uh, with your colleagues, and you know, I miss that camaraderie to some extent. I'll be honest with you, I still had that camaraderie when I went into government because I always felt like I was in a law firm for the government. I had 8 attorneys or 6 attorneys, depending on the time, and we all sort of we commiserated, we bounced ideas off each other. We were able to continue that through. Two other things about private practice I miss: the money. The money tends to be a little better in private practice. And two, you know, my firm used to send me out to various events, and I didn't have to pay a dime. That felt really cool sometimes, going to some grape grower events out in Napa. It was very cool. And once you get into government, ethically, you can't do that anymore, which is fine. I'm fine with that. But if I want to go to a grape grower event, I got to pay it for myself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I had two questions for Carly, but I guess I'll see if any open up the floor to see if anybody else has something. So I'll take up the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat, do you have a question?
Yes, hello. I wanted to ask about judicial intern programs. If you're familiar with them, and I'm the representative of the Student Bar Association at my school for the Monterey County Bar Association. So I feel this responsibility of connecting my classmates, like networking, and then getting back to them about internships or opportunities like the judicial intern program that I learned about, and I haven't like we don't seem to have one here, so I wanted to ask you about it to see if you could help me, I don't know, get it off the floor here where I'm at.
I don't think we currently have any internships available at the Sonoma Court for judicial interns. I know it has been discussed in the past, and I don't know if there was a program in the past and then it kind of withered and it hasn't been reinvigorated. But that is, Pat, that's a great idea. And what we can do is get together with Letty Perez maybe and the clinical department and see if we can't kind of reach out to the various courts that way.
And Judge or Carly have any experience with those programs that you can say anything about?
I was just going to chime in and say I don't have any personal experience with a judicial internship, but when I was in law school at Santa Clara University, the law school there had a close relationship with the Santa Clara County Superior Court, and there were always numerous judicial internships available in the summer sessions. Usually, I think they were for 2Ls. But you might be able to reach out either to the Santa Clara County Superior Court if they have a robust and established internship program. Maybe you could tap into, or maybe connect with students at other schools about how that got going, how they formed that partnership and built it out.
Yeah, the applications begin in November. like they would have begun in November of last year. And then they start interviewing like in February and make their selection in March. And so by the time I found out about it, it was too late to apply, but I was wondering why wasn't I informed? So then I'm passing on what I'm learning to see if we could do something for our schools.
So let me just jump in here real quick. And I think we have a student on who did experience interning with a judicial officer in San Luis Obispo County, if she wants to speak to that. But otherwise, they used to have more programs for internships with the local courts for students, but some of those programs were cut because they do involve a lot of oversight with the judges. So it just kind of depends on how many positions are available with the court, which I know in San Luis Obispo, some of those positions, it may only be that one judge is taking on one intern for a semester. So it really is right now up to the individual courts to put that information out that they are seeking internships, or a student who may have a connection with a local judge saying, I'm interested in interning with you.
Did I see another hand up, or maybe it went away and
Yes, I had my hand
oh,
up.
yes.
Sorry. Figuring out can you guys see me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Okay. Hi, I'm Jarena McNeil. I I'm very intrigued about the research attorney. I've never heard of that before. Um the job I'm in now, I'm a therapist at a prison in solitary confinement, but prior to that, I was working with public defender in Santa Clara and private defender panel in San Mateo. So I did a lot of forensic work, post conviction, a lot of work with the prison system. And but I've never heard. I love research. I've never heard of that role. Is there a way for me to find out a little bit more of what that entails? And how do you support the courts that way with research?
Well, Tarina, you could email me afterwards, and we could set up a time to talk maybe on Zoom in more detail about it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So actually, we're closing in on the end of the hour, and I know we have students who need to sign off to get to class. Classes start at 6:30. So I want to thank our panelists and also Dean Hall for facilitating this. I really appreciated the openness with the discussion with the panelists, and really intrigued on their backgrounds and how they, kind of flipped the script and went completely in a different direction. So that was really inspiring to hear that. So with that, we are going to end tonight's session. Again, want to thank everyone for being here.